Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 34 of the Survival Project. Today's episode is a cracker. I'm not going to lie, it's one of my favourites to date. This episode is, of course, about IBD, but more than that, this episode is about what chronic illness does to a man. It's about what it does to your strength, your relationships, your confidence, the role that you thought you were supposed to play in the world until chronic health issues turned up. Today, we speak about dealing with possibly not becoming the man that you thought you would be. These two boys, Owen and Oliver, are high achievers despite the cards they were dealt, and they leave no stone unturned. This conversation, as I said, it's one of my favourites because this one goes deep. And my favourite thing is we can still have a laugh while we do it. So let's get into it. Owen, Oliver, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to have you back, lads. Both conversations I had with both of you previously were absolutely fantastic. So I feel privileged to have you both back here today for World IBD Day.
Likewise, Jonathan. It was a true pleasure last time, and I'm sure with Owen here, it's just going to be even better.
Can't wait. I can't wait. Thanks for making it happen. I'm so excited to just talk some more and get to know Oliver too.
We're just going to spend the whole day patting each other on the back being like, yeah, good stuff. Well done. Great. So I suppose to kick things off, Oliver, I'm going to start with yourself. By the end of today's conversation, for any young man listening to anyone who's listening, what would you like them to have learned?
Lots of things, but I think the overarching thing here is that it is absolutely normal and okay to have negative feelings such as doubt and shame. And I'm not saying that you should have it, but it's normal to feel them. And I can assure you that there are many more people that are feeling the exact same thing as you, and you are absolutely not alone in those thoughts. And I think this is why this podcast is so great. We need to make this, a habit of people of being open and honest about these things, especially when it comes to things like intimacy and IBD and stomas. I think we've come a long way, but we are not there yet. So I hope this helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about the things that don't really get talked about is it's a great angle to go with today to make sure people don't feel alone. Owen, for yourself, what would you like for someone to get from today?
Yeah, I think I kind of stand in such a special place where I'm still young and still figuring things out, but I have a certain way of going about things. And so I want people to see that it's okay to still be figuring it out and just being able to confidently take that next step. Who knows what the outcome's going to be, but just being proud of yourself for just taking the next step, just keep moving forward, because as you ultimately know, that's where you get all the lessons that stick with you and make you who you are. So yeah, I want people to be comfortable with that.
Fantastic. A general theme that has come up even from both of our conversations previously was the sense of identity that can be sometimes lost from who we are, what a diagnosis can take away from us. But both of you are high achievers despite the obstacles you've had thrown in your way. Owen, you recently just absolutely smashed a PB out of the park with Ravn. Unbelievable stuff. So for you yourself, I'd like to dive into, where do you pull your motivation from to keep going despite everything that you're dealing with?
Yeah, so many different places, right? I think every dark corner that I found myself in during the time that I was so sick with ulcerative colitis, and then post-surgery, finding myself, all those times where you really felt alone, those feelings always come back during a race because you're essentially putting yourself through the same sort of trauma voluntarily, but they're never as bad as what it was when I was in hospital or when I didn't have the answers from the doctors. And so that allows me to just keep going. I can just put it into that perspective and go, this is nothing, and kind of just laugh at it and keep going. And it's so powerful.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to see the power of the mind, to have experienced everything you've gone through and go, I've gone through that. Not like nothing's going to get in my way to achieve what I want to achieve. You have a surgery coming up in the next few, is it 9 days roughly? So
Yeah.
by the time this comes out, you'll have had your surgery. How's your mind going into that at the moment?
Yeah, it's a perfect time to talk about it on here, right? Because I'm in the thick of it and I know that it's definitely been so difficult. I've said it plenty of times to my partner when we're up at night that I just feel like I've been in the passenger seat for the last couple of months, definitely since the start of the year. It's been so difficult. I had a scare because they found a big polyp in my stump, which ended up just being a large inflammation growth. So that held me in leeway for a month of not knowing if it was cancerous or not. And all these months I was still putting in the training because I'm a creature of habit. I love my routines, but it was so difficult to soak it in. And I really felt like I was just watching it. And so, mentally, that's been so difficult. It's made me numb to everything. It's made me realize in the moment that I'm not soaking in these moments that I've been looking forward to. Realizing that then makes you upset, and then you spiral and you're even further away from enjoying what you're doing. So, yeah, I mean, the race itself, that's the only time where everything goes quiet, and I've got the objective and I just power through, and that's what I love because say to my doctors and stuff, it's like my training's cool and all, but I don't get to unleash any demons that I have. It's on race day that I get to do it. And so, yeah, I finally get to just let that all escape and, yeah, it just gets me going. I love it.
Fantastic to have that outlet. And Oliver, for
Yeah.
you, you're another man who is building a massive business, something that's going to help so many lives, what you're creating. When you think of the future, possibly of what could be in store for you with IBD, hearing Owen's story, how important is it for you to hear what Owen has gone through and for him to share his information because of possibly the uncertainty in your own future?
Yeah, first of all, Owen, I love the vulnerability that you're showing here, and I could echo a lot, especially I don't have a stoma, but I've been in that exact situation before, right? As you also described here, and I wanna just mention that I actually think for me, being in between the hospital visits and feeling symptoms and all of these things that make me spiral with anxiety is actually the hardest part. It's like when I'm at the hospital and I'm feeling, okay, now something is getting done about my flare, getting a new medication, and I get the support around me. But I got to be honest, like right now, these last 3 days, I have some very worrying symptoms. And this is the hardest part, as you say, on the passenger seat. And it's like, I almost don't want to get in touch with my doctor and tell him about it because that opens up Pandora's box. You know what I mean? It's really weird. And then at the same time, when there's no action, the fear just kind of accumulates, and it's super tough. And you feel like you're stuck in this no man's land where you want to get help, but you're also afraid of what it might be. And I think that's something that a lot of people can recognize, that even when you're out of hospital and even when you are in remission, the fear of it coming back is something that really drives how I live my life. And it kind of sucks. It sucks a lot, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie. And this is back to the mind, right? Like the more I learn about this, I'm only 6 years in with IBD, but the more I learn that the mind really controls a lot of things. And I think that also goes back to what Owen, like you just want to push through. You want to do your workout. You want to do what's good for yourself. And that's really a mind thing, not a body thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. From hearing what Oliver has touched on there, what would you like to add to that, Owen?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, the more that I've been able to think about it and talk about it, my time with ulcerative colitis was so difficult for that exact reason. And I completely understand what Oliver's saying. I mean, even if it was 6 months between hospital visits, no matter what, it still felt like a reset. And so it made every single time I came out feel like, well, what's the point? And eventually, that's where stoma surgery was actually a relief because for me, I was like, all right, well, finally, I'm not going to have to come back into hospital every couple of months or even every couple of weeks when it's bad. And I think that's really unfortunate because there's so many factors, like you said, to do with your mindset. When we look at how the autoimmune diseases build up and become a thing and chronic inflammation, and you look at our mindset and how similar we are, there's a lot of similarities that you can draw on, like the fact that we all are people that want to push through. The fact that we could really sit back and observe that we are people that live in high stress environments because our body is, just reflecting the stress it's feeling internally. And I think, yeah, it's so mental. And because it becomes a character trait or one of your attributes that you are strong and you push through, sometimes it becomes detrimental to your health.
Completely, completely. Sometimes don't know where the limit is because we have to push through it so often. And sometimes we can hit that ceiling and kind of push through it to our own detriment. And Owen, I'm sure I've seen the way you train. You are a testament to that, my friend.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's my Achilles heel. My doctors have said it so many times, and it's been the thing that I've had to get better at is actually knowing when to stop because, you're so used to just putting your head down and going, I know I've been through worse pain. I can make it through this. But it doesn't mean that you're not damaging your body. Yeah, all right, you can make it through it, but, for the long run, it's not good for you.
take that moment to say, do I need to push that bit harder here, or do I need to kind of care for myself and practice that little bit of self-care internally, when sometimes we can be just fighting, knowing when it's time not to fight. Oliver, I just want to dive back into something you said there earlier, and essentially it's about the fear state, action versus inaction. So if someone is listening to this at home and they know they're sick, they're afraid, they're not sure what their next steps are going to be, can you talk to them about the importance of action versus inaction?
Yeah, I mean, I try to live by the action cures fear kind of mindset, because I've experienced so much that inaction just makes you stuck in this. But it's also difficult because taking action isn't always the right choice, because you need to understand your own thoughts in this. Is this really, is this really worth taking action for, or is this me overthinking it? And that constant battle is something you learn. I mean, you learn to understand yourself a little bit better. I've learned that in the beginning, when I saw blood and mucus, that it's like, okay, this is a sign I need to do something. But when I have pains and cramps and maybe just little mucus, I'm thinking, okay, in the beginning I went to the doctor, but now I'm like, let's try to see this out. Let's try to wait. And that is the action, to be patient. So it's really about finding the right action in this way, but doing something that you believe is right, and not feeling completely helpless and feeling like I can't do anything. It's also like it's something you do on purpose when you say that you need to be patient, which is an action to me too. So I think there's a constant balance you need to learn here. Also because there's a fear, maybe we'll touch upon that. There's also a fear of rejection at the doctor. So I come and I have the symptoms and I take some action, and then you're just waved off, and it's like, yeah, you know what? Let's give it some time. Maybe it's the underlying IBS that's tricking you, and like, help me here. I'm doing something to help myself. Like, please be on my team. So yeah, it's difficult.
Definitely the fear of rejection is a topic I'd like to dive into, because the fear of rejection is nearly like a sphere in so many different aspects of our lives. There's the fear of rejection from possibly a partner, the fear of rejection from the doctor, the fear of rejection from, I suppose, society and friends, when we don't exactly fit into what we feel we need to be a functioning member of society when health takes over. Could you, Owen, dive into fear of rejection that has possibly come up in your own life?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like the standard in terms of we've heard it the most would be just being out in public, people not understanding because the invisible nature of our diseases, and even just having a bag, it's quite invisible in itself. Yeah, the real misunderstanding, being scared of that, and kind of segregating yourself because of that. That's been a fear of mine that, I was lucky enough to get over. But, I think when I first came out of hospital and I was told, in a couple of months, you're going to get this wave of energy and you're going to feel good. I really held on to that. And, I did feel that 3 months after surgery. And the month after that, I went into a sprint triathlon and went and did it. But I think in hindsight, it was realistically more than just about proving it to myself. I think I was trying to prove to others that I was still strong and normal. And I think it was fueled partially by things that had to be stripped off since then to really go the distances I go, because those were all fake. Those were just a load of shit. So pardon my language, but it was just fake, and it was based off not wanting to be rejected.
I completely get that. I'll tell you one that just popped into my head, something I kind of forgot about. After my first surgery, I went out with a group of friends, and at the time so the identity I had built up as a young man was that I was strong, I always got into fights, I was always angry. And when I had my first surgery, I still identified as this young, angry man who was dealing with all the perils of the world, teenage angst and all that, coupled then with the incurable disease. So that was an absolute bonfire of problems. But the first night I went out with my mates afterwards, a bit of a fight started. And rather than, I was only maybe a couple of months after surgery, and rather than taking the step back to be like, oh God, I'm still a little bit fragile, I might get a punch in the stomach here, I was the first one in to throw a punch. And that was because I was so afraid that my friends would think, he's not the same as he was, we can't rely on him, whatever. My friends have never once thought that. The second they saw me going in, they all dragged me away trying to look after me. So I think we can build up this idea possibly in our head that we are less than, or that we have to prove ourselves more just to achieve and just to fit in. How about you, Oliver? How was that showing up in your life?
That resonates a lot, what you just said. It's like, There's an identity before IBD and identity after for me. Up until I had IBD, I did have other chronic diseases such as arthritis and psoriasis, but it didn't stop me in the way I wanted to live in the same way. After I got IBD, I had a loss of identity, full stop. It's like my body rejected me, like talking about rejections, right? It rejected the way I wanted to live. I put up a fight against it, but it was the wrong fight. I was fighting against my body here. And doing that only made it worse. And I had to accept that I'm not going to be able to live like I did before. I lived a high stressful life, went out all the time. I worked 2 jobs. I studied full time. I thought as a guy in his 22, 23 years, it's like, you got to have that, yeah, I can do anything. And now I can do everything that I want to do, but I can't do anything. And that's okay. And that's the kind of rejection that I had from my own body. And just maybe adding on top of that, I think rejection is the strongest word that goes on and on in my life, because it's rejection from going on a date. It's rejection from friends not understanding me. It's rejection from doctors. It's rejection from my body. It's that constant fear of rejection. And you know what? You take that into your work and you take that into a relationship, and then suddenly you build up a character of yourself that is based on rejection or the fear of rejection, which is extremely tough to wrap your head around, and something that I work with my therapist with probably the most. So yeah, rejection is a big part of this.
Completely. And I know myself, the fear of rejection. I recently spoke to a girl who had endometriosis, and she is possibly going to end up with a stoma bag because of how severe the endometriosis is. And the question she asked me was, what was the first thought to come into your head when you were first told you need a stoma? And the first thought that came into my head was, what girl is ever going to want me if I have a bag stuck to me? That was the first thing, and that was probably a driver of a lot of behaviors that have come since. And when I spoke to her, she said both men and women, she has asked that question to all say the same thing. It's the worry that the other sex won't find us attractive, won't find us as a very good potential partner. You have a long-term girlfriend. How has your experience been a kind of shaper of the relationship that you have?
Yeah, I mean, I was very lucky to, I guess, not have to experience that side of things post-surgery. Internally, of course, I had my own thoughts. Yeah, I was nervous. I've always been a certain type of person when I was younger. And I think, I wanted to just mention that before, because from hearing us all kind of talk about, I know I'm, still 23, but I started doing things when I was really, really young and got exposed to a lot of stuff when I was young. And we all have very similar patterns. And, for me, that looked like sleeping in parks, going to school, sleeping about 2 hours, and just never living on a consistent schedule. And the stress that came from that, the fights from sleeping on the streets and all that sort of stuff at a young age, kept me in fight or flight all the time. And I think, for one reason or another, there's a lot of similar patterns between all of us that, again, show how much stress we experienced from such a young age and how much it disrupted all of us. For my partner, it was also really difficult because she got to see the before and after, and a lot of my friends are no longer my friends because they've seen the before and after, and they can't even understand it, let alone my partner, who has gone and seen it all, experienced it firsthand, has gotten her hands so dirty, so dirty. She's experienced it just as much as me, bar the operations, so there's 2 sides to the sword. I'm very lucky for the fact that I didn't really necessarily have those thoughts towards rejection, more just about accepting my body. But yeah, it was a hell of a ride, but it's made us much stronger for it.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and what a fantastic woman to see both sides and still see the human being that she is in love with.
She's the best.
It's a beautiful sentiment. For you, Oliver, how has your IBD kind of shaped maybe potential relationships, or how you head into potential relationships?
Yeah, more than I would like to. I would like to start off by saying that everything I'm about to say now about relationships, I completely understand their view on these things, but I've been in a couple of serious relationships where IBD, Crohn's disease, simply, it was not the factor that made us break up at all, but it was a very determinant factor in how I could behave in a relationship. It took over my life. And in the beginning, I actually thought, this shouldn't matter this much and they should love me as I am. But I made it a big deal. it is a big deal, but I made it a big deal in the wrong way. And I think that have shaped the way I look at relationships now. I remember telling my friends at some point I was really into this girl, and I said to them, yeah, you know what I just want to do now is to make sure that she falls in love with me within the next 2 months without me telling that I have Crohn's, and then like take her by surprise, and then now there's no way out. And obviously don't do that. I mean, to everyone listening, don't do that. Just be upfront in the beginning. It's the best way you can do it. But that's the kind of thinking you do when you've had an experience that is bad. And unfortunately, I've had a lot of bad experiences after flares. And I remember after my big first hospitalization, I actually lost my long-term girlfriend while at the hospital. So I was really afraid of what would happen after that, right? And again, nothing against her. This is really, I'm taking everything on me. It's a lot for them as well, as Owen also said. But I remember calling my friends here as well. And it's like, I'm really nervous. I'm going on a date. And normally I'm not nervous. And I went on this first date, and I was sitting there, put on my best clothes, and I thought I looked nice, but I also just lost 15 kilos. So I was really, skinny. Which is okay, but I was sitting there with my drink, and I was like this, shaking because the azathioprine, so the medicine I was on, was just making me. And she looked at me and was like, "Are you nervous?" I was like, "Yeah, but that's not why I'm shaking." And and then it just went out of me like, "Yeah, I've been hospitalized. I'm on this medication. It's blah blah blah." And then didn't hear anything from her after. I was opening up too fast. So I've tried not opening up too fast, and it's really difficult, and it will shape your experiences, but you just got to get out there again and again and again. That's all I can say.
Completely. And it depending on the situation, a side of us can show up that we don't really know. I can't imagine that you would ever go into a date thinking, I'm going to tell them everything about what I've just gone through. But in the moment, maybe with a glass of alcohol or whatever it is, something can just roll out of the mouth. And afterwards you go, fuck.
Exactly.
I know myself. I'm recently out of a relationship. I wanted to be very honest with this girl because I saw quite a lot of potential in it. I saw a future for us. And we did talk about the future. And one of the things that came up was first of all, my health is always uncertain. And I made that very clear in it. I was like, look, I'm good now. I'm the best version of myself that I could possibly be at the moment. But I don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I just want to be quite honest with you that if you want to get into this, we're both on the same page. We both know what's going to happen. Now, that relationship ended very, very abruptly. For me, myself, from the conversations we had, that was definitely a guiding factor in it. But from speaking to other people who have stoma bags and have IBD, who have long-term partners, have been married and stuff like that, a lot of them would always have a story when they look back where they were dating someone who they thought was the one, we'll call it. And I recently only spoke to a guy on just a few voice notes over and back, and he's mentioned how he was madly in love with this girl, told her all his background story. She made out she was still in it, then eventually she used that as she was like, sorry, I don't know, it's just not for me, I'm out. And he said then 6 months later he met the girl that he married. So he said at the moment he was just so cut up, he couldn't believe it. How could this girl he thought he was everything could leave him? And then 6 months later he said, someone that I couldn't even imagine how good they could possibly come into my life. So I think it really is testament that we have to, I know the women will say, kiss a few frogs, before you find the right one. But you really have to keep moving through it and have confidence in yourself that the right person is going to come in to match your energy. So yeah, it's beautiful. Is there anything more either you would like to dive into on that topic before we go on?
Well, I mean, I just want to say further perspective from our side. I mean, when people are going out dating these days, they're going off the person they've been able to build for X amount of years, 20 plus years. You're putting us in situations where you're going on a date, you've got this brand new body, even if it is 5 years old, you don't see any 5-year-olds going on dates. So, I mean, right? So, unless you're at some island somewhere, I'm not sure. I just think you really have to think about it like that because there's still so much unknown. There is so much mystery to your day-to-day life. Of course, that can come out in weird ways and funny ways. And, and if that person in front of you can't reciprocate that energy and understand where you're coming from, then yeah, I mean, it can be really difficult, but that might not necessarily be the person for you.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I remember just one thing that has popped into my own mind, just on the topic of intimacy and the right person. I had a girlfriend when I got my first stoma surgery when I was 19, and we'd been together for roughly about a year beforehand. And she had seen me in my bad boy phase, my sick phase, and probably had seen the good phase and the way I treated her. So she'd seen kind of all sides of me. And when I went through the surgery, my head was fried. It was emergency surgery. I didn't want the stoma. I had accepted I was going to die rather than get the stoma. So this is how averse to getting it I was. Got rushed in for the emergency surgery, got it. And then I didn't text her for a couple of days afterwards. She was blowing up my phone or whatever. And when we eventually got talking, I said to her just in a couple of messages, she's like, look, I don't know if you want to be with me anymore. I don't know if we're going to be able to be intimate. I'm not too sure like what the hell my life's going to be. And she just texted me back, shut the fuck up. And it just changed in my head. I was like, right, okay. And when it comes to that kind of type of intimacy, I've been quite single for the past 10 years. So we'll just say I've been quite promiscuous in my 20s. I've had a bit of experience, but I can safely say it has never come up as a problem having the stoma in the visual sense when you meet someone new. Usually maybe after a couple of dates they'll go, what is it? Like, why are you wearing that band? You know, people don't actually think. Someone said to me that I thought it was a back brace. I was like, yeah. You know, so it's kind of funny that we can paint other people with our own views on how they'll react rather than giving them the opportunity to react. So, Oliver, is there anything you'd like to add to that before we move on?
Yes, so absolutely. First of all, I'm just getting something genuine already from having this conversation with you guys. What you just said now, Jonathan, with this fear that you had with stoma. It was also a big fear for me. I've been scheduled for surgery several times. I've been through the same thing. I remember saying that I'd rather die than I have my colon removed. And it's looking back, yeah, it's not how I wanted. And actually, there are often times where I think of maybe I could just not end the misery, but stop being on all of these different drugs and get a stoma and get on with my life, because I'm in this constant fear of getting it, which I maybe shouldn't be. But I just want to say this helps a lot tremendously already, hearing your experience with girls and how we project our own feelings onto that. And that might not be true. And I just want to say thank you for that. And then the other thing that I want to vocalize here in this chat, because I've never said it out loud before to anyone, because it might become real then. But being a man in general, there's a certain way that society looks at you. There's a certain way that people look at you, that girls look at you, of what being a man is. I think there's been a wave of now it's more okay to be vulnerable and to cry as a man and so on. But I actually feel that it's gone a little bit backwards. And now there's like two different groups of people where it's like you cannot cry and be vulnerable as a man, or you're a real man because you cry and are vulnerable. I'm the one who cries and I'm vulnerable. And I'll tell you why, because I am deeply scared of not being able to be the man that I want to be for my future wife and my future kids. I'm deeply scared that I can't be able to pick up my kids, put them on my shoulder, because I'm simply hurting too much. I'm scared that I'm going to miss the big events. I'm scared that I'm not gonna be there for them. And I feel myself tearing up almost, like just saying this out loud now, because I hope other people can resonate a little bit with this, because I'm afraid of growing up. I'm afraid of taking the next step. And you know what? That is scary. And I can't even give you good advice. I want to say that, you know what? Go for it. Someone will accept you. Someone will understand you. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there. So yeah.
You don't even need to give advice in that statement, because the truth in the words you just provided there, every single person who's listening to that, you just put into words exactly how I feel about the future and how I feel about maybe meeting a partner and, you know, not being that man who is the provider. Because as a baseline, as men, we are seen as the providers, the protectors. And if you can't be the masculine side of yourself and be the man who does the things he needs to do to protect his wife, his potential partner, his children, that can really remove that sense of identity that is built into us genetically. So no, I really appreciate sharing that, because it is such a true fear for anyone who goes through this experience.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, it's so true. And I think for me personally, like it's such a, that the whole part about growing old is such a scary topic for me, because from young, once I started getting really sick, I never thought about growing old. And the fact that when I was diagnosed at 16, instantly I started fighting my own body, and I did realistically all the things that weren't going to help me at all. And that narrowed my vision down to, I never even expected to make it to 20 years old. I never thought about my future. I never thought about growing old. And I lived that way right until I had my stoma surgery. And in hindsight, I can talk about my stoma surgery being something positive, but I did see it as my death. I never saw it as a new chapter in my life. And I spoke about it a little bit with you, Jonathan, when we spoke last. Yeah, I went to Europe for 3.5 months, packed as many prescription pills that I could. I had all of my steroids with me. I was upping my dosage of steroids pretty much every day to just keep my symptoms away, while I was drinking alcohol, while I was abusing every substance I could get my hands on. And I just figured I would never come home, and I did. And I eventually had this surgery right after, because I was in such a a bad way, but it never clicked in my head until I woke up after surgery that I had to start taking care of myself. And a lot of the things that were happening to me were because of me. And that was a really, really hard thing to come to terms with. But it was also so powerful to be able to, I couldn't go anywhere in hospital. Like you guys know, you're sitting there, you can't do anything, let alone walk. People will put you in a wheelchair and open doors for you. And I speak about that all. That killed me. I just wanted to open my own door. I just wanted to feel the wind on my face. I just think at the end of the day, these feelings, if we can manage to just get them and use them for something positive and something that can just really drive you forward, it's more powerful than anything else in the world. You know, you're so close to death essentially without dying. Who else gets that perspective?
I'm not going to lie, I'm so emotional after listening to you. I'm like, oh, boys.
Yeah, I just got chills from hearing Owen's story as well. I got a whole new perspective for me on this. I've never thought of it that way.
That's what I love about this conversation is we had the conversations before to allow us to have this conversation.
Yeah.
It's a ladder. It's a ladder. There's a lot of things that you can't topics without building the foundations first. And boys, I have to say, I'm so happy to have this conversation with both of you. I feel privileged to be sitting here to have it. And I can feel my eyes burning in the back of my head. I'm like, don't cry on camera.
No, be vulnerable.
Yeah.
You cry. Go ahead. Do it. No, but I'm feeling the same, Jonathan. It's powerful. I just got to say, it's really powerful.
Well, one thing on the topic of crying, when I was very young, I cried but after a football match, something just so inconsequential or whatever it was. And I remember my father saying to me, shut up with the fucking crying, stop being such a baby. And I was like, do you know when you're like, all right, yeah, Sam, I'm supposed to be a big boy or whatever. And then a couple of years later, maybe a year or two later, my father cried in front of me. It was the first time I'd ever seen my father cry in front of me. And I remember back to that moment. I remember thinking, you're supposed to be the man. You're supposed to be strong. You shut up with the fucking crying, right? Mm-hmm. And in the naivety of me being that child, my father was crying at a hospital appointment because they had told him and my mother that the medication wasn't working. They didn't know what they could do for me because there was no other options. Me not understanding the impact that could have on a father about his son, I saw him crying and I remember it pissed me off so much. I was like, how dare you tell me not to cry and you're here crying? Completely different situation. Mine was a football match, his wasn't. But anyway, this shaped so much of my thoughts on crying as I grew up then. From that age on, I can safely say tears never left my eyes, to the point where I was averse to them. If I saw another man crying, I would be like, pathetic, how dare you cry, you're supposed to be a man. I'd really built up this almost a toxic masculine thought process when it came to crying. And I went to a psychologist and she was like, until you cry, you'll never heal what's going on up here. So then I spent a lot of time trying to cry. And anytime things would come up that would obviously make you cry, like loss, grief, different things like that, the tears wouldn't come. I'd get such a headache and I'd even be like, come on, get out, get out, get out, get out. Would not come. Even through my surgeries, the tears wouldn't come, but I'd get splitting headaches from it. And it's only through years of genuine therapy and talking about it that even I could feel the emotions rising. I could feel a little leak every now and again that came over the years, maybe past 26. It took me to about 26 to really kind of start being able to dive back into my mind and remove these masks and these blocks that I'd built up. And I remember at my last surgery, I was so upset. I was like, fuck's sake, how can this shit keep happening to me? I'm in so much pain. I got an abscess. I wasn't healing. And I started crying and I couldn't believe it. So much so that I have a video of it where I'm actually laughing while tears are pissing out of my face. And I was like, I have to record this. I have to show my mother. And you know, you see this online where you see people recording themselves crying and you're like, fuck's sake. But I have 2 videos of me crying. And in both of them, I'm looking at the thing and I'm like, oh, stop crying, you little bitch. But I definitely think that sometimes we can build up a thought process in our head that is just not the truth from a possible previous experience. But I think hearing men that you know are strong, like listening to you and knowing that, you know, you're allowing yourselves to be vulnerable, you're allowing that part to come up. And I think that there's such a strength in that. I think it's actually easier to just sit there and not let them feelings come up, not show people that you're vulnerable and pretend that we're all this strong, because no one's that strong. The vulnerability exists inside. So I think having these conversations and showing other people that, you know, you are a man and it's okay to cry. You know, it's not, no one's going to think like, oh God, you're weak because of your action or whatever. So yeah, no, I really appreciate you boys sharing everything and sharing things so openly for me. For yourself, Oliver, is there anything you'd like to talk to Owen about?
First of all, I got chills of hearing your story. It's extremely powerful, and thank you for telling that. It gave me a whole other perspective on not wanting, you know, maybe to live because, you know, you just faced it, or maybe you're going to die. And I just have one other point I think it's important to mention, because with these diseases, inflammatory bowel disease, but also a lot of other chronic diseases, you go into a state of depression when you are handling these things. And that state of depression comes with its own challenges mentally. While I have never been suicidal, I've been deep down into a hole with this where I had no hope of a future. And that is just a dead man walking anyway. And I think I want everyone to know, because there are also statistics out there that shows how many people actually get depression after a first-time diagnosis with something like this. And if someone is sitting out there being depressed right now after a diagnosis or long after a diagnosis, this will pass. It will pass. You're going to be okay. There's going to be lots of good things in your life. Right now you're depressed, and you can see that because you're depressed, but you will look back at that period and you will think, okay, it was bad, but I'm out. And the next time it comes, I can use this, because it will probably come for a lot of people. You go through these spirals of flares and remission and depression and anxiety, and you take something with you every time you get stronger. And that to me is something that I can use in every area of my life. I can take this and I can say, yep, I passed the test. I did it once. I can do it again and again and again. And at some point, I have a feeling that I'm going to be a kind of invincible like I was before. Not in the invincible sense, but I can do what I want to do, right? I said I can't do anything, but I can do everything I want to do now. And that's what comes from these experiences.
Thank you so much for sharing that. How about yourself, Owen? Have you anything you'd like to talk to Oliver about?
I think just to talk to you guys in general about, but I just want to say thank you both for being so open about it, because I've never seen a psychologist and I've thought about it a lot, and I've got many reasons why in my life I've always sort of avoided it. When I was 16, I had to go to counseling because I overdosed, and that had always left such a scary thought, because for me, that's what counseling was. That's what seeing a psychologist was. And I also have been around a lot of people growing up where showing your emotion would make you vulnerable. And so because of that, I really struggle to cry. I really struggle to, show emotion. But after my surgery, it really changed. And I also think with the running, it's really funny because I will cry during an ultra marathon like no tomorrow, because I'm happy, because I'm sad. There are so many reasons why I cry out there. And I think that's, kind of unclogged the tap for me, because just last week I came home and, the whole thought of this surgery coming up and, you know, am I going to be strong enough to take on whatever it throws at me? It just scared the shit out of me. And I came home and got in the shower, and my girlfriend was out here just working on a laptop, and I closed the door, put music on, you'd never know. And I broke down in the shower and I couldn't stop crying. And that's so rare for me to do. I really don't do that much. And then I not only got out of the shower, but I went and told her, and I've never ever done that. And doing that, I mean, it fixed so many of my issues, which is just crazy to me. And I think it goes to the point of acknowledging those feelings, making them come out of you. They're real, but they can move on and you can pass them off. Hearing you guys talking about going to speak to a psychologist, because your friends and your family, they're not always necessarily geared to take on all of these issues, really makes me want to go and see one, if not before the surgery, definitely after.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that, because to be so vulnerable with someone who would know you so well, to show the other level to you, because as a man, we always want to be seen as strong, but like there's such strength in showing someone this is what's going on. And despite what's going on, I'm going to get through it. So she knows the strength you have. And then, and obviously knowing who you are, to then for you to show her how you're really feeling, she must know exactly how big of a step that was for you. So fair fucking play to you, because I feel a lot of the time human beings, a lot of them can live on the surface of the mind, and for us, our conditions and everything we have to go through has made us dive really deep in underneath and see what the hell is going on here, what actually makes us up. So in one sense we get burdened by this incurable disease that is ruling our entire life, but in the next sense it allows us to dive really deep in and say, who the fuck am I? And what's going on in here? And that makes us stronger people from it. And I would say that it definitely helps the people around us to get a much closer connection. I can safely say that everything I've gone through in my life has made me 10 million times closer to my family than I possibly could ever have been. Now, obviously we don't know. It didn't happen any differently because it didn't happen any differently. There's no way it could. But I do feel blessed in the sense that my family know me better than anyone in the world, and we have that massively deep connection. And I feel that they have been able to open up to me in the same strength because I've been able to open up to them. So it is one of the gifts that we get disguised as a bomb. But I suppose just to round it up, is there one final topic you'd like to go into? Like, the floor is yours now at this stage. So if anything pops into your heads, that's where we'll go.
There's obviously a lot of things we could, as you said in the beginning here, Jonathan. I think we could have a 4-hour podcast or 3, and maybe we would lose some listeners after the. Yeah, exactly. But I think just one reflection and realization that I've made recently, that I'm not saying is true for everyone, but I've always tried to want to feel in control, right? Like, I wanted to feel in control of the disease here and on my body. And I've kind of realized that, okay, then I thought, well, sometimes you need to surrender instead, right? Like, you don't need to try to control everything. You need to surrender into it and acknowledge it as it is. But I also like the fact that we're fighting our asses off to actually stay on top of our game and to be where we want to be for people around us. And I don't know, very recently it just came to my mind that, the fact that I am willingly able to surrender also makes me in control, right? Like, that is somehow a form of control, by acknowledging that you are not in control of anything. Does that make sense? Because to me, it actually helps a lot framing it this way.
Makes so much sense. I mean, even for when I race, the more I let go, the better I can race. And it just translates, it really becomes like a hands-off task. And that actually allows you to have so much freedom. Maybe not on your day-to-day, but mentally. You're just like, wow, it's not on my mind so much, because what will be, will be. I'm doing the treatment that my doctor said. And I am pretty much a gastroenterologist by now with how much information, and I got to say, sometimes I'm going to be blunt. It pisses me off when I see people in our community who have been through so much and they're incapable of seeing the value in it, because I just want to show them, I'm not mad at them. I'm mad at the situation. I'm like, you are so powerful. You are so capable, because your perspective is so much broader than so many people. You just need to be reminded, because I promise you, like, you can do anything you want. And I want to keep telling people that, because look at our day to day. We don't have consistent routines. We don't have consistent sleep. We have to deal with the most awkward situations, the most embarrassing situations. We have to learn about medication that's 15 letters long. It's like you're learning all these things, and we're just taking it on, and we're still working full-time jobs, and we're still trying to find our partners, and we're still going through everything else that our neighbors going through, but more. So take that. You are so strong.
Yeah, it's a fantastic insight into it, because I think people can get so bogged down by the everyday perils of the life that they're going through. They can't see out of the fog, and they can't see how strong they are just by getting out of bed some days. And as you said, dealing with all the things, like the bandwidth you need in your mind to take all this stuff in, compartmentalize it, and actually get through the day. And even just on the topic of medication, as you said, trying to understand what this drug is going to do to you and going to help you, and understand the pitfalls that all that go with it, and you can't even pronounce it. It's just it's a lot for the mind and for everything to be controlling. Boys, this has been absolutely fantastic. Is there any final thoughts you want to make?
I think this is a perfect way to end it. The comments from both of you here, that you can do anything that you put your mind to. Actually, maybe especially after you've been through what you've been through. So use it.
There's I'm going to absolutely butcher this, but there's an Alex Hormozy quote where he talks about the no, I'm going to butcher it. I can't do it. Fuck. Do you know the one? Where he's talking? It's the Smith, and it's who you are at the end. Anyway, I'm gonna forget about it, because I'm gonna make balls of it. I need to get better at recalling these quotes. I hear Chris Williamson doing it all the time. I'm like, oh, that could be me. And then I go to do it, and I'm like, fuck.
Hey, I've got
practice makes perfect
for you if you'd be interested.
Yeah, hit me. I love a good quote.
I've been reading Ross Edgley's book on resilience, and he had a quote in there that said, "The young do not know enough to be prudent, and therefore they attempt the impossible and achieve it generation after generation."
Woo! I love that. Yeah. And on that note, That is absolutely beautiful. Well, I love when people can string words like that together and just change your perspective on everything that you think about. So that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Lads, it has been my pleasure to speak to you today, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds for both of you, because you're two absolutely amazing men.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Massive thank you to Owen and Oliver for coming back in the podcast and for speaking with so much honesty. They're not easy topics to discuss, but those boys made them easy by their willingness to share. This isn't preaching, this is sharing. It's giving a window into our minds to hopefully help someone else just not feel alone in their own thoughts. So for anyone who's listening, who's living with IBD, stoma, chronic illness, or just the fear of actually not knowing what your future might look like, I hope this conversation reminded you you're not weak for feeling afraid. Everyone's fucking afraid, but we will get through it. This is part 1 of my World IBD Day double episode week. On Thursday, I'll be joined by Sarah O'Connor and Terry Brannan. Powerful conversation on the female experience of living with IBD. It's another fantastic conversation. So stay tuned for that one. And as always, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoy the pod, please let me know in the comments or share it with someone. Engagement really helps me grow it and reach more ears who might need it. I'll see you in the next one.